Good afternoon. I just want to welcome everybody to our Day in the Life Career Exploration Series. Today, we're going to focus on law. We are very, very thankful for the panel that we have today. So excited to have such amazing colleagues here who have gone through their JD and are practicing attorneys. This is our third career exploration panel, and this is one of those things where we want to give you an in-depth look into different careers if that's something that you want to do. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A buttons to ask any questions at any time. We'll try to get to them. If we don't get to them right away, we may get to them in. If not, we have your contact information and we can get that answer to you out. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. We have Tamani Taylor, we have Leslie Buentello, and we have Shelly Sani. And today they're going to kind of give you their own little intro bio, and we'll move right through this. We have a lot of really interesting questions, and this should be something that is very beneficial to all of you. So we'll get it started with Tamani.
Hello, my name is Tamani Taylor. I am the Chief Deputy Public Defender of the Solano County Public Defender's Office. Solano County is in Northern California. We're located kind of right in the middle of the capital of California, which is Sacramento. So we're to the southwest of Sacramento and to the northeast of San Francisco. We're still Bay Area. And I've been with the Solano County Public Defender's Office as an attorney since I graduated from law school in 2007. I actually started interning at the Solano County Public Defender's Office in my second year of law school. I went to Golden Gate University School of Law. I started there in 2003. I graduated from the University of California of Davis. I earned my JD in 2007, and after passing the bar, I was hired on at the Public Defender's Office, and had started out as a deputy public defender, doing juvenile work, then going into doing misdemeanors, then on to felony work. I did all kinds of trials, including murder trials and capital cases, which are death penalty cases. And then at this point, I am the Chief Deputy Public Defender, which is a managing position, which means I supervise and I do kind of the day-to-day operations of the office. And I am in charge of training lawyers, supervising lawyers, and managing the operations of the Public Defender's Office of Solano County. We have two offices, one in Fairfield, California, and one in Vallejo, California. And we have approximately 57 attorneys throughout those offices. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Tamani. It sounds like you stay busy and you've put yourself in a good position to kind of know what's going on, and that's great. So let's hear from Leslie.
Hey everyone, my name is Leslie Buentello. I'm what you might call a baby attorney. I've only been an attorney for a little over 2 years, and I'm a deputy public defender, meaning that I have, a caseload. I'm in court just about every day. I graduated from Berkeley with my JD degree in 2018, and then while I was waiting for my bar results, I started working as what you call a post-bar, kind of like a intern at the Public Defender's Office here in Solano County. So I've been with them ever since I got out of law school. I went to UC Santa Cruz, so I've always kind of stayed near home, which to me is East San Jose. A little background as to, how I got into law. It was always just kind of like the obvious or like the natural choice for me as, the oldest daughter of Mexican parents who, even though they didn't go to college, instilled the importance of education. I always knew I was going to go to college and, helping others. And this just seemed like the right fit, especially, coming from a family that has been affected by the criminal justice system and seeing that firsthand. This seemed like an area where I could really make a difference. And I'm finding that to be extremely true. And yeah, yeah, I think that's a pretty good picture of my background.
No, that's really good, and you know, you're just getting started. I mean, we have this discussion 10 years from now. You have a whole lot of other stories there. So thank you for that. Last but not least, we're going to have Shelly go ahead and tell us about herself.
Yeah, so hello, my name is Shelly Sani, and I am a deputy public defender with the Solano County Alternate Public Defender's Office. And essentially, so yeah, the public defender and the alternate public defender. And so my office, we come into play if for some reason the public defender cannot accept representation of an individual, whether maybe it's a co-defendant case or there's a conflict of interest. So then my office will come in and represent that person. So I received my BA in politics back in 2011 from the University of San Francisco. Then from there, I took a few years off before law school to kind of explore other, I guess, interest or career ideas. So I was teaching for most of that time in elementary school and middle school in English and math, which was fine, but there's certain ages I can't handle. So I realized I don't know if I could do it long term. And then I also mediated in Santa Clara County in small claim cases and also family disputes. So I was just a middle person trying to find common ground. Thereafter, I finally went to law school in 2014 at the University of San Francisco. I say ultimately because my family was concerned I wasn't going to go. And similar to Leslie, my parents immigrated here from India. And I am actually the youngest in my family. No one has gone to grad school. So it was something exciting that they all wanted to happen. And I was taking my time getting there. So there's a little bit of pressure. But yeah, then I ended up at Solano County. My family actually relocated to Fairfield from San Jose. And so I interned with the public defender's office initially, and then worked there for a little bit, and then found a permanent position in the alternate public defender's office. So that is a little bit about me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, all you ladies. I appreciate that. And you know, we're just going to roll right into the questions here. There's so many different parts of law. You know, would you just give a brief overview of the public defender's office and kind of the part of the law that you're in, Leslie?
Sure. So, I mean, law is super expansive, right? But like one way you can think of it is there's the civil side, which is where either people or corporations sue each other over things. And then there's the criminal side. And what happens in the criminal side is the government is alleging that a person has done something wrong, has violated the law. And so what the Constitution provides is that whenever the government alleges that you've committed a crime, you're entitled to an attorney. But the way, you know, that this country works, a lot of the people that are alleged to have committed a crime often cannot afford an attorney. And so what the Constitution also provides is that if you cannot afford an attorney, you get one appointed to you. And that's where the public defender's office comes in. So we're criminal defense attorneys, but for people who cannot afford a private criminal defense attorney. And I would say, at least in misdemeanors, which is what where I work, which is misdemeanors or crimes where you cannot do more than 1 year county jail. Most of the people in that courtroom, you know, are represented by the public defender's office. So most often, if you see people in a criminal courtroom, their attorneys are going to be public defenders. And so what we do is we guide people through the process from beginning to end. We're there when, you know, they're read their charges. We're there if any issues come up during the case that, you know, different motions we have to file. We help people resolve their cases if they want to resolve. And we also go all the way to trial. If the person wants to fight their case, then we're the attorney who is there with them throughout that process. So that's in general what a public defender is.
No, it makes perfect sense, and a super valuable resource to have, and they're lucky to have you because I see a lot of stress involved with that, with families and just things like that, and I'm sure you guys help try to alleviate some of that. So, you know, when you get going in something like that, which feels kind of selfless to me, I'm sure that you guys get paid and all that, but that's something that is really empowering, I believe, and so. But how do you pick your career? Like, how do you pick something like that, Shelley?
I would say for me, well, I guess when it comes to picking a career, I think it's really important to try out everything that could interest you. And I say that because this then becomes your whole life. And at least for me and how I perceive my life, I better make every day worth it. I want to be proud at the end of the day as to what I accomplished, knowing that if this day is my last, I did something good for somebody. And it took me a while to figure out what that is. And how do you find something that can give you that much reward at the end of the day? So like I said, I tried out everything. I tried out teaching and like mediation. I worked in some political organizations, maybe for like policy change, but that took too long and I'm impatient. So, I wanted something more hands-on right away. I could help the person next to me. And so that's ultimately what drew me to law, to represent someone. And then to figure out what that particular career is, that was a whole other path, a whole other journey in law school to figure out where I belong. And it was really kind of trying out the internships in different areas of law, the clinics that the law school offers. And ultimately for me, it was finding a public defender in San Francisco who became my mentor and really instilled more confidence in me that I could be an advocate for somebody. And it just felt right to address racial issues, to address poverty issues. Like for me, it just felt right. And, I'm happy to have chosen it. So that was my, I guess.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, coming in, trying all those things, and putting on a pair of shoes that fits probably feels pretty good. So that's really good. So, same question though. I mean, how did you pick your career, Tamani?
Well, as a very young child, so I decided I wanted to be a lawyer as a very young child, and that comes from a very kind of funny story. Is as a kid, growing up in the '80s, I watched the Cosby Show, and Felicia Rashad was a lawyer, and she had a family, and she was strong, and she was Black, and she was professional, and she was the only woman of color. She was the only Black woman professional that I ever had seen or was ever, introduced to in my entire life. Like really, probably the only one I know until I became an adult. So she really, in that experience was just watching a sitcom. I think as a little girl made me want to be a lawyer, because ever since I can remember, I've wanted to be a lawyer, and she's the only person that I knew of who was a lawyer, because no one in my family was. I'm a first generation college student, but I didn't know what kind of lawyer I wanted to be. And so my journey to law school took a couple of turns. I graduated high school. I did well in high school. And then I went to college, and I just wasn't ready because I didn't have a family member that had gone to college, and it was overwhelming, and I dropped out in my first year. And then I got pregnant and I had a kid, and I was working. And then one day I decided, like, I didn't want to ever tell my daughter, like, I didn't want to say, hey, I wanted to be a lawyer, but then I had you. And so I never reached my dream, or I would never want to put that burden on her. And so what I did was I said, you know what, I want her to be my motivation. I want her story to be, I was my mother's motivation to achieve her dream. And so I went back to college, finished college, and then applied and went to law school. And I thought I took Mandarin Chinese in undergrad, thinking I was going to go and be some kind of transactional attorney, fancy, making lots of money, and China, doing all kinds of offshore stuff. I didn't even know what I was going to do, but I just knew I was going to make a lot of money. And then my first year of law school, I had a contracts class and I had a criminal law class. And my contracts class, I had no idea what my professor was talking about. She could have been talking French for all I could tell. But my criminal law class, like, I was in that class, and the amount of systemic racism and overt racism, and the racism in the opinions themselves that were just like, yeah, we can be racist. it's okay to be racist. It's okay that judges are racist. It's okay that jurors are racist. It's okay that prosecutors are racist. It's okay that the defense attorney representing the Black guy is a racist. That's all okay. Yeah. And I was just angry and mad and fueled and motivated. And thankfully, by that point in my school career, I had realized I needed mentors because I didn't know that early on. And I had a mentor, and my mentor said, hey, I know a woman who's in the night program at Golden Gate School of Law, and she lives in your county, and she is interning with the Solano County Public Defender's Office. And I think that's what you need to do. I think that's what you want to do. I think you want to go into criminal law. I think you want to be a defense attorney. And so he got me in contact with her. And she said, oh, absolutely. And she got me in contact with the public defender at the time for Solano County. His name was Jeff Thoma. And I did an interview with him, and he said, oh, yeah, absolutely, you can start. And I started the second semester of my second year of law school. And it just fit. This work capitalized on my attributes. I was always kind of the fighter for the underdog. If somebody was being picked on, I was always the one, coming to their rescue. I always wanted to argue. I always, was fighting authority figures and saying, well, if it wasn't right, then I wasn't just going to go along with it. And so, every day I also learned something new, and it was a career field where I realized you never can know everything, so you're always going to be learning, which also was something that I wanted because I had been in jobs where you get to a point where you kind of know everything, and so you're just kind of doing the same thing every day, and nothing is new and nothing is different and nothing is changing, and you get kind of stuck. And so the more I interned, they just couldn't get rid of me. I interned for my second year. I stayed for the summer. Then my third year came, and I just never stopped. I just never stopped coming. And then when I passed the bar, they hired me on. And so I kind of just fell into it. And when I got into it, I knew it was right for me, and I knew it was what I was meant to do. And it was something that, like I said, it used everything I was good at. And it also kept me interested. And I also knew it was something that I would never know everything, and I would always constantly be learning. And so I think that and I still am 15 years later. And I know that I'll never know everything. So that's why I became a public defender.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool. I think the journey and getting to a place where, every day you can have both challenges, and then, being in a leadership role, I'm sure that also adds to what you do, and some of the things that you're capable of doing. So that was really, really good. So I know a lot of you are thinking about a career in law, and taking tests in school and things like that, and I know they just don't hand law degrees out and bar passing around. So I mean, I want an overview of kind of what it took to get there. So I know kind of how you guys got there, what decisions you made, but so as far as research, years, work experience, you guys talked about mentors, credentials, what does it actually take to get to where you are right now, Shelley?
So, okay, so obviously, while starting to go to law school, you obviously need to take the LSAT. And for me, that took a few times because I couldn't get my score high enough. So I took it. The third time's a charm for me. And I think even when you're applying to law school, you want to show that you're a well-rounded person. You have to write a whole statement and, have your resume and applications. That's why I always tell people after college, you don't have to just dive into grad school if you don't want to, go experience other things. And I think, in my opinion, it makes you a better student. You really appreciate the education and knowledge you gain when you're in grad school, when you've experienced, in my opinion, other things. So once you are obviously accepted into law school, right, it's a whole other thing of trying to make yourself appealing, because you are competing with other people for internships, you're competing, right, for jobs to get into clinics and things like that. And at least in my law school, they really pushed us, like, keep your resume going, like it should be ongoing. You have to have internships in the summer, you know, internships while you have classes and things like that. So, you know, for me, my law school offered, and I know many do, a lot of networking events, and I attended as much as I could, aside from studying, because that takes up all of your time and you're crying the other half. Okay. But, you know, whenever I can slip in, you know, networking events, I would. And to be honest, I'm a very shy and quiet person, at least more so back then. I felt so uncomfortable to put myself, you know, forward. So what I did is I kind of latched on to one professor, and she kind of she'd always go to events with me and introduce me to people that way. And at least I just felt comfortable being with her, and she could do, you know, a lot of the legwork there to start conversations for me. So I did a lot of that. Like I said, resume building is important. So I interned, and I basically took advantage of any internship, right, that came my way. So for me, I interned at like the Human Rights Commission in San Francisco. I applied for international internships while I was in law school. So I went to the Czech Republic for a summer. I worked for the Superior Court there. And I went to Texas for this death penalty clinic, and I helped with trying to investigate cases of people who are on death row, kind of the last stage, to, you know, kind of save them from execution. And so I also participated in clinics, like I said, like the public defender's office in San Francisco paired up with our school. So we helped them on bail motions to try to get people bailed out or lower their bail or get them released. And so, you know, it's really important that while you're in law school, like I said, to build your resume, because once you're out and you pass the bar, you're competing with a bunch of people, you know, to get a job, and you really want to stand out. And so, you know, I think networking is really important. And also, you know, just every internship, you know, you can handle and interested in. So I mean, at least that was my path to get here. And then obviously you just gain experience while you're in the job to further yourself.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. I think the biggest thing for, you know, any career, different things like that, is that, I mean, it feels earned when you do all that. It feels earned, not given to you. And I think that's one of the great things about law, because all of you are serving the public good, but like I said, you put in your time and effort to get there. So that's awesome. So, I mean, now let's get down to like the nitty gritty. Like, you know, people know lawyers have different things, private, public, all that stuff. So what I want to know is, what does the day in the life of attorney look like? Like, what does a day look like of your job? And, you know, and so we'll take Leslie with that one.
Okay, so I'll start off with like literally what time I wake up. So I start off, my alarm goes off at like 6. I'll snooze for like 30 minutes, wake up at 6:30, you know, do all my stuff in the house. My plan is to usually leave the house by 7:30. I live very close to the office now, so I get there by 8. That's like on a good day, get there by 8. Court starts every day at 8:30. And so the good thing is I have, you know, friends who went into all sorts of different law professions, like, you know, big law, like tenants' rights, all sorts of nonprofit. But what I love, especially about our job, is that our day is broken up. We more often than not have to be in court. So we're not just sitting in front of a computer all day. Like, we are out there meeting with clients, like negotiating with DAs, you know, doing motions in front of the judge every day. So on a typical morning, I'll walk over to court, get there at 8:30. Then normally we do what are called arraignments, which is like new people being, you know, read their new cases, and then we'll get appointed to some of these people's cases. So it's when we're meeting clients for the first time ever in court that morning. And then we also have clients that, you know, we were already representing, and we meet with them there and we talk about their cases, if we're going to resolve that day, you know, if we're going to present the court or the DA with more information. There's a lot that goes on in court in the morning. So that'll take usually like 2 to 2.5 hours of my day. So I'll usually get back to the office around like 10:30, 11. When I get back to the office, I'll try, you know, to update the files of like everything that went on that morning. That'll usually bring me to about lunchtime. Lunch, I mean, now with the pandemic, a lot of the times we don't even really have our lunches. We'll just eat in our office and kind of work through lunch. And then the afternoon is kind of more of when we're doing like our desk time. So that's when we're like calling clients to fill them in on what happened in court, or having office appointments, discussing cases with clients. It's also a lot of the time we have to fit in when we're going to be writing our motions, or when we're going to be preparing, like we have an investigation team. And so a lot of the times, you know, we can't go out and talk to the witnesses ourselves. So we'll have to create like investigation requests and send those to the investigators. So it's really the time when we like work up our cases. But our days never go as planned, right? Like we'll have a list of things of like, this is our to-do list. These are the things we want to accomplish today. But then our job is kind of like dealing with people who are experiencing big crises, right? So we'll have like people coming into the office, like, you know, upset, and you'll have to deal with what's happening in that moment. Because a lot of the times, even though we can't fix people's problems, right? Like they might be coming to you with problems dealing with like losing their housing or whatever it is. A lot of the times our job is to try to connect them with resources, even though that's not necessarily our job as public defenders. We're usually the only person that our client has that kind of has connections to resources and can inform them of like, you know, how to get help in these kinds of situations. So our days are often interrupted, but I mean, that's part of the job, and it feels good to know that you can help people. So that's generally what the afternoons look like. And then sometimes you'll have court in the afternoon as well, if you have like motions and stuff that you want to argue. I'd say that on a good day, most of the misdemeanor team is in the office till like 6 is average. It's a rare day if you get to go home at 5. I'd say a lot of us are there a lot later on a day-to-day basis. And of course it varies, right? Some days you'll be there really late, and some days you can leave at 5. But what I really like about being a public defender too is that, and every office might vary, but so long as you're getting your cases done, you're doing what you need to do on your cases, there's not someone like breathing down your neck to be like, did you do this one? You're kind of like your own boss in that sense, but with the perk of having attorneys all around you to ask for help. Like you have so many more experienced attorneys around you that you can always go to for help. So it's like the perk of like, I get to handle my own cases how I see fit, but I have the help of everyone around me if I have questions. So that's kind of general on a day-to-day basis what being a public defender looks like.
No, that's great. It sounds like you got it down. I think, you know, looking at it from a standpoint of breaking things up, that is good, to where you're just not always sitting there mired in paperwork. Because, you know, my vision of lawyers is stacks of paper all over the desk where they don't know where things are and got to do that. But it sounds like you guys have it pretty organized. Now, that's from the standpoint of someone who's kind of newer to it. So I want to hear what it's like for someone who's been in it for a while and maybe in the supervisor role. So that's perfect transition to Samani. What do your days look like?
Well, my days, you know, can look somewhat like a line deputy, like Leslie's day, depends. I kind of get these quasi different roles. But, you know, we don't necessarily have stacks of paper anymore because we went to a case management system, which is electronic. So now they, instead of carrying files, they now carry a laptop that has all their cases in it, which I was in charge of figuring out how you take a bunch of paper files and put them all into a computer and do that in a manner in which, sorry, I have little fur babies that can't behave for very long. So that's one of the things that I do is figure out how to transition from one system to another system, and not only and then, you know, how do you do that effectively and efficiently, and then track that data is not lost. But my day actually starts at 4 in the morning because I get up and I work out because I'm much older than the young ones, and I have to work out harder and eat less to look as good. So So I get up 4 in the morning so I can work out at 5 in the morning. But I actually don't have to get into the office until later because I don't necessarily have court every day of the week like they do. But sometimes I do because I do have cases, but my cases are generally, I have less cases and they're of a higher magnitude. So I have cases where people are generally facing life in prison or the death penalty. And so I don't go to court as often, but I do then have to visit with clients. I do have investigation requests. I do have to file motions and things like that. But I have lots of meetings. So I have a meeting to talk about our case management system and how to make it better. I have meetings about having meetings. I have meetings with misdemeanor lawyers about what's going on in their cases. Sometimes so I'm kind of an information booth, really, is that while I might have things that I want to do and get done on any given day, my main priority is the lawyers in the office. And when they come into my office, everything stops. Everything that I want to do or that I need to do, not wanted, but everything that I need to do in that day has to stop, and they're my priority. So if they have a question, they have a concern, they have an issue, I have to stop everything, and I want to stop everything so that I can help them because they're helping our clients on a far greater magnitude than I am on any given day. And so we have misdemeanor lawyers and we have felony lawyers and we have kind of specialty court lawyers who deal with conservatorship, so elderly or people who have mental disabilities that cause them not to be able to, provide for themselves. We have people who have drug substance abuse issues who have special courts. We have parolees who have their own. And so all of those lawyers are able to come to me to ask me questions about their cases, to talk to me about issues, to talk to me about the judges and what they're doing, and what they think they should do in any given case, or how they should react or interact with the judge. Sometimes I have to go talk to judges on their behalf. Not only am I required, not only is part of my job to field lawyers' questions, but then we have support staff. So we have clerical who support the lawyers. They create the calendars, they input new clients, they input witness information. So sometimes they have questions about, do we have a conflict of interest, which is what Shelley had been talking about in the alternate public defender's office. Sometimes they come to me and say, hey, we have this witness who's in a case, but they're also they have a case and we have it. Can we represent this person? And I have to make that call. Can we represent this person if they're also a witness in another case? And I have to read the police report, evaluate that. And if there is a conflict of interest, I then am responsible for declaring the conflict and pushing that information through. So I kind of deal with the day-to-day operations. I also then, the public defender, so I'm second in command. So there's the public defender and then there's the chief deputy, which is what I am. So the public defender often has things that she's dealing with. She's also a female, a woman. And so she, is dealing with things that she has to bounce off of someone. So I'm also her person that she bounces. So I have to be available for her. So I'm kind of the person that has to be there all the time because, she doesn't field the questions from the lawyers like I'm supposed to. And then I have to field questions from her. Also, if the court wants somebody, if the judges call us and say, hey, we have a witness that needs a lawyer. We need a lawyer to come. They call me. I have to either go there or send somebody there. So it's, I am the person that all what we call justice partners and all people in our office come to in order to get information or to make the decision on what should happen. So client complaints, we've had clients come in and they're having a meltdown and their lawyer's not there. They contact me. I've had lawyers call me and say, hey, my client's having a meltdown. The police are here and they're about to arrest them. what do? I have to resolve those issues. So I am constantly putting out fires. I am constantly addressing issues, and and I have to keep my cool, and I have to be calm, and I have to be available, and I have to be approachable, and you can't really have a bad day. Like, you have to, I feel overwhelmed, but I honestly can't let that show, because that person who's coming to me doesn't know the 900 other fires I've put out, and it's not their fault, and they shouldn't have to feel the wrath of the 500 other fires I put out that day. It's not fair to them. And so, I have to constantly have that in the forefront of my mind. So it's honestly, I've gotten, there was a time where I could focus for long periods of time. I no longer can do that. I'm constantly like, here, there, phone call, meeting, there. Today I was on 2 meetings, neither one had started, and then I had a call from the front desk that somebody's client was out front and they wanted to talk to a supervisor, and I was the only one that was available, and I had to go talk. So, it's a different stress. It's not as hard as the job that they do. It's a different kind of stress, but it's there.
What time do you normally leave the office?
It depends. Sometimes I leave at 4:35. Sometimes I leave at 7. It just depends on the day.
Well, I mean, you sound like a professional juggler. You have a lot of balls in the air at the same time, and a valuable resource. No, that's pretty amazing. I did not know that the chief deputy had to pretty much handle the entire office. That's a great a responsibility, and also probably pretty challenging at times. So that's super awesome. Thank you so much for sharing parts of your day with us, Maya. So let's kind of switch it up here. I want to hear maybe what's the funnest part? Like, what are some of the fun things or things that you get gratification or some successes, Leslie?
So I gotta say, even though it's probably the most stressful, definitely the time I sleep the least. Being in trial is definitely the like pinnacle. Like, that's what we do this job for. Like, that's like where you're gonna, feel up here, but also like the lowest lows. Like, that's what you do this job for. I feel that. I mean, that's how I feel. Because it's like you're making, the government put their money where their mouth is. Like, you think my client committed this charge, well, then prove it. And, you have like, you just feel like you have so many people in your office backing you, even if they're not directly helping you with the trial. It just feels like, yeah, it's, this job is very adversarial. Like, you're up against the DA at all time. And that's kind of like trial is the pinnacle of that. And so when you win, obviously it's like the best result you can get, your client is acquitted. But if you lose, then it's just like devastating, right? But I still say that it's definitely the most rewarding. And then also, I guess, tied in with that, one of the best parts or most fun parts of this job, it may just also be who my coworkers are, but there's a great sense of like camaraderie in the office, especially with like the younger attorneys. Like, if you do something good in court, if you anything like a minor thing, you always have your colleagues in your courtroom with you, like to back you up and to make you feel good about all your little successes, even if they're pretty minor. So I'd say that's definitely like the most fun, exciting part of the job.
No, that sounds great. I mean, I remember To Kill a Mockingbird, like in its courtrooms, and like it seems like, and I'm an athlete and sports and stuff, but it seems like a win is a win. Like, if you walk out of there to win, you have there's that endorphins that come with that. So that's really, really cool. So on the flip side, so what are probably the greatest challenges? What are the bad days? Like, what is the I won't say worst, because that's a negative connotation, but what are some of the toughest challenges, Shelley?
I'm glad that's plural, because there are so many. But kind of with trial, or actually in general, you have to be okay with losing. That is probably the hardest thing I had to learn as being a public defender, is because so many of the laws are designed in a way that it's just not going to give a defendant a fair chance. Like, it's frustrating. There's so many changes to be made, but you're kind of stuck in this position of what's already written. And then you have just practices of the judges, the prosecutors, the sheriffs, the officers, like people's normal way of kind of treating the whole system and their participation in it, right? Also, people have their bias, and you're just dealing with, so much that you obviously can't change it all, but you're just trying to get through it with your client. And so, I often tell my clients, even when we go to trial, like, the truth does not set you free. That's not how the system, in my opinion, is designed, because, like I said, with bias, like, you're dealing with jurors, people in the community that come from different backgrounds, and they may judge your client based on the race or what they look like. And even if my client testifies to his or her innocence, they just might judge what they look like and not what they say. And so I think that's a hard part of the job, is kind of having to be okay with this reality and then getting through it and trying to make a change. I would say some other challenges, and this might be more common in misdemeanors just because we have a high caseload, is you just don't really know when you're in trial. It's kind of last minute almost, especially if you have a client coming into custody, they get arrested and you got to go fast to get that trial going. You have to then cancel your weekend plans because now you're working, and family gets upset. I've lost some friendships because people just don't understand. But it's really hard to take someone's life and put that to the side. Like, it's someone's liberty. You've really got to prioritize it. I would say that's one of the hardest parts of this job is, like Leslie, I think, mentioned earlier, like, you become your client's everything. Like, they may have lost their family and they are depending on you. And so there's a lot of this like other pressure of, just being there for them and being that proper advocate. So you kind of have to make some sacrifices yourself. So I would say those are probably the greatest challenges.
Yeah, that sounds like it. You have a go to work and lose a couple trials, and someone comes in and doesn't have this. That, yeah, I can see how that will wear on you and definitely be a challenge. But that's more power to you to continue to do that and fight the good fight, especially being a part of the machine. You guys are just cogs in the machine, and hopefully through your good work, certain things will be changed while you're there. That's what the hope is. So that's really, really cool. So as we get toward the end, we kind of just want to give some different perspectives on. So we know we have different levels in the public defender's office. So just real quick, Tamani, can you just kind of tell me like the different stages? You kind of talked about how you interned and never left, but like what do you have to do to get promoted? Just show up, or is there some metrics they look at, win loss, or I mean, like what is the like how and why do people get promoted within your office?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of different factors. Doing trials is a important aspect of, because, the more trials you do and the more different kinds of trials you do, the more of a experienced person you are, because you're going to have to give that information. Like I said, people come to me and ask me questions about all kinds of cases and how they do. And so I have to be able to give them information. And the only way to do that is to actually have experience. And nobody can give you that. You have to get it yourself. But the other thing is to also be able to have an even temper and to be a person who can, get along with other people. So you do also have to have a personality that can get along with other people, and that people want to, um, uh, somebody that people see as a leader. So your leaders should see you as a leader as well. But you also have to put yourself out there. Nobody's going to say, hey, well, you have to say, hey, look at me. And that's a hard thing a lot of times for women to do, because women tend to want to put their head down and work and believe that their work is going to be seen, whereas men in the workplace are a lot more likely to be vocal about how good and great the things that they are doing are. So, and it's a lot more acceptable for men to be that way and a lot less acceptable for women to be that way. So trying to find the balance and trying to find the way to do that in a way that's acceptable and that show, so I think it's a combination of having the experience, showing that you're putting in the work, also being able to say I'm doing it and I also want the responsibility, and then being a person that people can see as a leader, all will help get you moving through. But generally, you go through being a misdemeanor lawyer, then becoming a felony lawyer, then moving on to a supervisor position. So at one point, I did supervise both Leslie and Shelley as misdemeanor lawyers. I was a misdemeanor supervisor, and then moving on to chief, and then hopefully moving on to being a public defender. That's kind of the trajectory of supervision. So I think
That's good. That's good. I think it's very nice to hear you talk about advocating for yourself. It's not always bragging, but at the same time, if you want something, you have to go get it. And I think being an attorney and seeing that and being able to speak up for yourself is probably why you were able to get to where you are, and that's really really good. So the last question we have is just, it's been touched upon throughout the whole time, and whether it be the rigors of law school, whether it be someone throwing a last minute client on your desk as you're walking out the door, whatever. How in the world do you balance your career, family, and social life? Like how is that something, or maybe some different techniques you have and stuff like that? So we'll start with you, Leslie. You're the newbie.
So like Shelley mentioned earlier, if you're in trial, there is no balance. You should just know that weekend I had to cancel a trip to Vegas once because I was gonna have a trial that didn't even go. So you have to be okay with knowing that there are gonna be weekends in your life that you're gonna have to cancel some plans. But then you have to make up for that by knowing that you're gonna have boundaries with yourself on weekends when you can have boundaries. So during the pandemic, I got into this bad habit of like, well, I'm not seeing anyone. I don't have anything to do. I should just go into the office for a few hours and like, let me just catch up on stuff. And then I was finding myself being in the office on Sunday, just like doing stuff because I could, and then not like taking the downtime to relax. Like you get into some unhealthy habits. I feel like it's unhealthy. If you don't have to go into the office to work, you shouldn't do it, kind of thing. So like just holding yourself accountable and be like, unless I really, really have to get something done that I won't be able to do unless I go in, or unless I'm in trial and I have to be there, like letting yourself not feel guilty about not going in to do the work. Because yes, our clients, there are a lot of there's a lot at stake, right? A lot on the line, but it's a fine line between being there for your clients and burning yourself out and not being able to sustain this for the long run. So I think just like creating those boundaries with yourself and like actually holding yourself accountable to like respect the boundaries once you kind of decide what makes sense for you. And I'm working on that, but I'm getting there.
No, that makes perfect sense, is being able to set boundaries. And the pandemic has shifted a lot of those boundaries for a lot of people. But at the same time, I think if you're conscious of that, then you can probably make some of those changes. Now, back earlier, Shelley, you had talked about losing some friends or different things like that. So how do you balance your career, family, social life, and then how do you deal with those people that you may have had time for before, but maybe not? How do you deal with that?
Like it really is an ongoing thing. Like I don't know. I have no perfect answers. But burnout is real in this job. And I think on average I have it like 2 to 3 times a year. And it's like it's gonna come, but you can't prevent it because you're just in it. But like for me this year, it just got bad to the point where I was like, I need to make changes. So almost similar to Leslie, I used to live 10 minutes from our office. So I was just there because it was just so close. And so on the weekends, I'd just pop in and I'd just get some stuff done. But it got so bad to the point where I didn't really notice it. Like on holidays, I remember at Christmas, because I only lived 10 minutes here and my family at home. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go see my clients in jail and just wish them a Merry Christmas. But then when I got back home, my family's like, where the hell have you been? And, it's like, okay, I don't know where the balance is and how to separate anything. So I personally moved out of the county. I moved to Oakland now. I had to do that for myself because it was also hard for me to see my clients on the street constantly and see them get arrested and try to not get involved, but then you end up getting involved sometimes, you know, like it just became a lot. So for me, that's what I had to do to create some kind of balance. And so now that I have a commute to work, that's the time I use to call friends and to catch up and, you know, or maybe just listen to podcasts or the radio, just because it gives you this mental break. And, you know, for me, my day starts at 5 a.m. and not because I'm working out like Tamani, but that's just the only time I get to myself. Like I'm excited to wake up at 5 a.m. because I get to meditate and then I get to sit with a cup of coffee and just sit and I watch TV. I cook a breakfast. Like that is just my time and I value it so much. Now, when it comes to friends, like social life, I guess I don't know, the weekends, if I have it, are there. But honestly, my friends cut down, but the ones I have now are the ones that get it and they respect my work. They respect what I do. So I don't feel as guilty, you know, when I have to cancel last minute. They understand and I appreciate them. So it's kind of having to figure out who fits in your life, because this is really, it's your life. Like this is your career. This is what you're working towards. And yeah, I guess this really is ultimately an ongoing thing, trying to figure out that middle ground.
Well, I mean I'm really happy to have all three of you here. You know, if I were looking to get into law, I would really feel like I benefited from just this 50 minutes of just straight knowledge. And I think overall, you know, the message here for me that I received from you is just, you know, try some different things and see what fits. And once you're in it, put yourself in it, put your whole self in it. It sounds like all three of you are invested in this as a career. It's a part of who you are. You take pride in what you do. And it looks like you all are getting certain levels of success. And like, once again, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that this is something that for me, being able to have these type of events where we can give and kind of an insight into what careers are, I think it's really helpful for the next generation. And you know, I'm once again, I'm really appreciate it. And so at this point, if there's anything, any words of wisdom, anything you want to share, any of you can just chime in. If not, we're going to go ahead and is there anything any of you would like to share before we sign off?
I would just like to say that the journey to becoming a lawyer is a very difficult one, and it will test you to the ends of your being. But if you just stick with it, and if it's something that you really want to do, you will get there. But at every juncture, you're going to think that they're trying to make you quit and they're trying to break you, because they in fact are, but they won't. You are strong and you will make it, and you just have to believe in that. So yeah, I think that's for anybody who's going to go through it, just remember that.
Those are words to live by, pretty much in sync with how life treats us. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody. At this time, we're going to go and sign off, and all of you have a great evening, and look forward to the future. Thank you.